Recently, I heard a great story about something every hunter I know, every serious hunter I think would want to do. And I was talking to one of my guide buddies. He lives out in Utah, and he was hunting with his cousin. His cousin shot his first bison. Now, I'm 39 years old as I record this video, and I would love to shoot my first bison. Here's the thing about it. The guy that shot it was almost 90. And so he shot his first bison when he was nearly 90 years old. And here's the kicker. He was surrounded by his friends and his family while he did it. And so it made me think, it's like, well, shit, like, how do we set ourselves up for success to be able to still have the capabilities to do something like that when we're 90 years old? And when you think about that, you think about what you got to do, right? But before you think about what you got to do, sometimes you got to take a step back and think, well, what's in the way? What's stopping me from setting myself up for success long term to be able to go out and do something like that? There's always problems. There's two that we're going to talk about in this video. And the funny thing is, when you start doing the things that set you up for success long term, a lot of those short-term problems go away. You solve them. You solve the short-term problems by doing the long-term thing. And so that's what we're going to talk about in this video. We're going to start with the two big problems. The first problem is extreme short-term thinking. Now, this is crazy, but thinking short-term actually makes you feel like you have more time than you actually do. And then what happens is you procrastinate. Here's the example. Let's say somebody's going to hunt elk in September. It's January right now as I record this video. They haven't started training yet. They just kind of dilly-dally around. Maybe they do a little bit of something. Nothing serious, nothing committed, nothing consistent. And then June rolls around and they're like, holy shit, I only got a few months. I got to get ready. And then they start doing some kind of crazy high intensity kind of training because they think that they have to catch up. But really, they just didn't give themselves a long enough runway. And there's no way that they're ever going to catch up and be as prepared as they could or should be to be able to go out and hunt. And then they do the same thing year after year because that short-term mindset walks them into procrastination. They procrastinate, they try to overcome the procrastination with making it up with some kind of crazy intensity. They're not prepared, and then they keep doing that. And not only that, they don't build the lasting fitness that they need to be able to promote longevity because they don't sustain it. They don't do anything to sustain it from an aerobic standpoint, from a strength standpoint, from really any standpoint. And so they have these bad patterns of thinking short-term, trying to overcome that short-term thinking with procrastination and then dumping on a bunch of intensity that's not going to help them. And then they go out and they get their ass kicked. And here's the funny thing about it is the cycle gets reinforced because they go out and they start the hunt. And let's say the first uphill just murders them. And so they think every uphill is going to feel hard or has to feel harder. That's just the way that it goes. And so then they think that their training has to replicate that to prepare them for it. But they don't stop and ask the question, should this uphill be as hard as it was? Should it feel this way? They just think, well, that's an uphill and I got to do shit that's miserable to be able to get ready for it. Nope. It shouldn't have been that hard. But their cycle reinforces that action because every uphill feels hard because they didn't prepare the way that they needed to. The second problem that we run into, especially when it comes to hunting, is guys think they have to wait until they have a hunt on the books or they have a tag in their pocket to start training. Not long ago, I had a guy reach out to me on Instagram. He said he liked my stuff, and he's like, man, I wish I had a tag or I had a hunt on the books because I'd love to train with you. And if that's your mindset, you're already behind the curve, way behind the curve, because there's no way you're going to be ready for that tag. We'll do two examples. So first one, let's say you draw the combo tag in Montana, the big game combo tag. Gives you an elk tag, gives you a mule deer buck tag. Those draw results don't come out until mid-April. You can start hunting elk in September. So in Montana, your general tag allows you to hunt archery season. If you're not successful, you can go back, you can hunt rifle season. So you can, if you look at that, you only have a handful of months from the middle of April until the beginning of September. It's not a long enough runway, especially when you think about it takes 8 to 12 weeks to get your basic aerobic adaptations down. And that's just getting the party started. You're gonna need more. And if you're following a smart training program, that's about all the time that you're going to have before you got to go to the mountains. You can't get any of the specific uphill and downhill work in that you need to be ready. And then you think about other hunts, maybe something crazier. Okay, so I'll give you an example. I'm going to Nepal in 2028 on a blue sheep hunt with one of my clients. We're going to walk up into the tallest mountains in the world with the least access to oxygen, hike for 4 or 5 days before we ever even get into the country that we're going to hunt. And then when we hunt, we're going to walk around the whole time. It's not like traditional mountain hunting where you walk in, you hike in, you sit, you glass, you find your critter, and then you go get it. The whole day is moving to hunt the blue sheep. Now, that's a way more extreme example. But if you wait until there's absolute certainty that the hunt's going to happen, let's say, maybe you say you're going to put it in the books, it's written in pencil. It's not written in pen until maybe 6 months before the hunt. You have to start preparing for a hunt like that. It literally takes years to be able to prepare for a hunt like that. And so if you wait until everything's solidified, all the stars align to be able to prepare for a hunt like that, you're dicked. You're going to go out there and you're going to get absolutely murdered. You actually might get hurt. Like you might get altitude sickness, you might get pulmonary edema. You're definitely not going to be able to perform the way that you need to. So if you look at these two examples, if you wait until everything's absolutely booked, or you wait until you have a tag in your pocket, there's no way you give yourself a long enough runway to be prepared. So that short-term thinking on both examples kills your ability to be ready in the short term. And here's how you can use long-term thinking to overcome all of that. So I'm gonna tell you another story. Years ago, I was in State College, Pennsylvania. It was 2020. It was a year after I started, what was then Human Predator Pack Mule, which is now Pack Mule Training Company. And I was meeting a potential client in person, and which is something I rarely, if ever, get to do, but he was one of my best friend's bosses, and I happened to be in Pennsylvania visiting, and so I was like, well, yeah, let's meet, let's chat. And so we went to this park, and we're standing there bullshitting, and we're talking about mountain hunting and everything like that. He'd done a lot of it up to this point. And at one point, he talked about how, of course, mountain hunting was a big goal, but he had another goal that was even more important to him. There's this hike back home. It's on the Johnson Trail. It goes from Alan Seger Natural Area up to the Greenwood Fire Tower. It's not a crazy long hike, but it goes pretty straight up, pretty crazy grade. It's almost 9/10 of a mile, and you cover 1,000 feet of vert in that 9/10 of a mile. And he said to me, my main goal is on my 80th birthday, I want to be able to go hike from Alan Seger up to the Greenwood Fire Tower. I was like tickled pink when I heard this, because that's the exact right mindset that sets you up for success. And here's why. Because when you think about who you want to be long-term and where you want to be long-term, it changes your identity in the present. And you start behaving in a far different way. You start doing the little things consistently that accrue, that allow you to become that person. Because now, if you don't do the things that you got to do, you'll never get to that point. And the funny thing is, because you're thinking about where you want to be years from now, and you start acting consistently, it keeps you consistent in a way that actually gives you better short-term results and gets you more prepared for the short-term things you want to do for this hunting season or whatever else it is that you want to do in your life. But having that long-term mindset changes your identity, changes the way that you act, and makes you more consistent, which sets you up for success right now. So we'll use let's think of 2 college students as an example. We'll use another illustration as an example. Let's say you got we'll call him student 1. Student 1 does not give a shit about learning the material. Just wants to go take the test, get it over with, move on, get a decent grade, move on with his life. Student 2, however, values what's going on. He values the material, he wants to learn it, and he wants to be able to use it in his life as he goes forward. So student 2 maybe tries to study, gets lazy, gets bored, and as soon as he gets bored, he decides, well, screw it, I'm gonna go drink, I'm gonna go do something else, and blows it off. Student 2, however, consistently studies a little bit at the time, keeps doing what he needs to do to actually learn the material, and then even when he gets bored, he keeps doing the thing that he needs to do to keep going forward, to prepare for the test, to learn the material. Day before the test, student one decides he's going to cram. So he stays up all night cramming, learns as much as he can before the test, and then goes in and takes it. And when he shows up to take it, he's anxious. He's worried. Doesn't feel confident about what he's about to go do. Goes in, gets his ass whooped, gets a bad grade on the test. So he never even got close to meeting his objective because his behavior is leading him to the objective, because his sole objective was a very singular outcome. So there's no way that he could become the person. He didn't change his identity to become the person that could do well on the test. Student two, however, because he studied and he's the person that wants to not only get to the test, but take what he learns from that test and use it for the rest of his life, he walked in. Of course, he's a little nervous. Sometimes you're a little nervous when you go in and take a test, but he used those nerves as fuel, and he went in and he did a good job and he got a good grade. And not only that, he actually learned what he was doing so he could use it for the rest of his life. And then you look at that from an example of what we're talking about, from short-term preparation for hunting while thinking for long-term goals. Because student two, we'll call him hunter two now, decided that he was going to do the little things that he needed to do to be prepared for that test. We'll say it's this hunting season, got a hunt on the books or whatever it might be. He set himself up for success to take everything he gained from training, use it on that hunt, take from that hunt and keep going, because he has a longer view of the future. So he did everything he needed to do to be prepared, because it's an identity-based thing. He wants to be that person, but also he did everything he needed to do to be ready in the short term so he could continue to be that person in the long term. Hunter one would be the same example of the guy that either just has the tag in his pocket, or he waited until June to get ready because he had a short-term mindset and he procrastinated. So he crammed for the test all summer, and then he went out and he got his ass kicked. It's the same exact thing. We have to think like student two. We got to be student two, think long-term so that we can act short-term, sets us up for success in the short term, but then also in the long term. So what do you need to do to start thinking like student two / hunter two? A great place to start is to envision yourself as the 80-year-old version of you. And I want you to envision yourself as that person and then feel incredibly grateful for all of the work that you did when you were younger that set you up for success to still be able to do all the things that you love doing. And really feel the gratitude for that. Feel how you're still capable. Feel how like the rest of the people that you know are sitting around looking out the window talking about what could have been or what used to be, and you're still out doing the things that you wanted to do because you did the things that you needed to do now, because you saw yourself as that person and you acted accordingly. And so you feel sincerely, not hippy-dippy shit, feel sincere gratitude as that 80-year-old because the younger version of you did what they needed to do to get you there. And then the second thing is just start. Start imperfectly. You don't have to have everything aligned to start getting consistent, to make progress, and to start stacking wins so you can move yourself forward. Really what you got to do is make an identity shift and say, I am the hunter who trains. And when you start to let that sink in, your behavior starts to change, because you won't want a gap between who you say you are and how you behave. And so you'll start to close that gap, however imperfectly. But it's important that you just get started. Do what you can with what you have now and start building momentum. And then the next thing you do is you just look at your life right now as it is and you make a plan. You look at where training fits in and you start doing it if you're not doing it. Or you look at how can you make it better? How can you maximize it? And here's the thing. A lot of people sit down and they use time as an excuse. Time is not an excuse. Everybody gets the same 24. You just are using your priorities in a way that's not benefiting you in the short term or you in the long term. So you have to look for the space that you have and utilize it. And one of the best things that you can do to show yourself that you actually do have time is pull out your phone and look at your screen time. If you spent 5-6 hours on that sucker today, you have time. You absolutely have time. I told this story on a podcast not long ago. I train a very busy CEO who's also a family man, who also loves to mountain hunt. He gets in at least one strength training session per week and at least 3 hours aerobic work every week while being a family man, being a CEO that runs a very successful and busy company, and everything else that's going on in his life. So there is time. You just have to sit down and you have to make it a priority and cut out the bullshit that doesn't really matter. So if you want to be able to hit that hike when you're 80, or to be the guy that's out there when he's 90, shooting a bison for the first time with his family and friends around him, you got to cut the short-term bullshit, change your identity to being the hunter who trains, and think about the long term so you can act the way that you need to in the short term to take you there.